Creatures chatter and tales begin, dragons, fae, and healing lore, magic and wonder behind every door.
Hi, welcome back to Mystic Menagerie. I hope you enjoyed the last episode. This time around, I'm going to be doing one regarding giant breed dogs. A lot of people get confused between what giant and large differs, so I'll be going over that as well. Just like last time, as a disclaimer, I am not a veterinarian. I am a licensed veterinary technician, but that includes not being able to do proper diagnoses. That is outside my legal scope. So please, if you have a concern about your pet or someone you may know, please have the owner of that pet consult their veterinary team, decide what might be best for them depending on what symptoms or issues might arise. That in mind, let's continue. For giant breed dogs, I'm going to be referring to probably Great Danes and St. Bernards a lot because those are ones you see most often, but it does include a wide scope, everywhere from Irish Wolfhounds. Dobermans are sometimes considered giant breeds, it just depends how large they get, but they're complicated enough, so I'm sure they could fit on that roster fine. Newfoundlands, Anatolian Shepherds, and Tibetan Mastiffs, just to name a few. The list is pretty extensive, and unfortunately, a lot of us in the vet field don't see many of them, but we see a common few. Of course, I hope it goes without saying, most Mastiff breeds, personal favorite of mine, along with the Irish Wolfhound, those are giants as well, any Mastiff breed, since they have high requirements along with the others. Some of those requirements do include a lot of nutritional based stuff, so I'm branching out a little bit from the last episode. Not sure if I should have called this a part 2 or not. If you think I should change the title, please let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, I'll keep it as is. For those requirements, when the giant breeds are puppies, use a Great Dane for example, they do need giant specific food. The difference between large and giant breed foods when you're looking at puppy or adult food do include things such as how much phosphorus and calcium are put into the food. These components have a big factor in growth and development for young puppies. Their bones do need a lot of calcium and phosphorus, but they absorb these slower. Large and smaller breed dogs do tend to absorb things faster. It's just how their metabolisms work. The giant breeds grow so slow and don't live as long, but they do take a bit more to absorb things properly, so their growth isn't even over until they're almost 2 to 3 years old. So keep that in mind. Any dog that has giant breed in them should probably be on puppy food for at minimum the first year of their life. If you get them spayed or neutered before they're a year old, bad. Personal choices, I do realize that's entirely up to the owner's discretion, but some things we do try to let owners know in any clinic is for the benefits of keeping an animal intact. That would help the growth factor for their bones and muscles quite a bit by keeping them intact and bearing with the heat cycle, bleeding, or detouring any male unwanted behaviors, and of course being a responsible pet owner as far as not letting your animal, if that one is intact, around others that may be intact to help prevent unwanted litters, which is a big enough issue in the country as it is. So I highly recommend keeping a good eye on your animal if they're intact, only because a lot can happen in a very short amount of time. Dogs don't need much. That aside, quick interruption. I did just want to say real fast, if at any point you hear weird buzzing or loud noise in the background of this, I am so sorry because the complex I'm at is doing yard maintenance today, and I thought after 4 hours they might be done, but it's still going, so I'm just trying to roll with it. Anyway, back to the normal stuff. I don't believe I mentioned in the last video, unless specifically told otherwise by your vet team or you've done extensive testing with your individual baby and they have a proven grain allergy, they've gone to the specialist, all that jazz, the important stuff that we in general practice don't typically do. I really encourage you guys, if you are feeding a grain-free diet to your dog, please look into alternatives, only because giant breed dogs and dogs that are on grain-free food for an extended amount of time are at higher risk, if not have a propensity to get what we call cardiomyopathy, specifically dilated cardiomyopathy, or DCM. That gets real dangerous no matter the size, only because that includes the heart muscles themselves getting much weaker, they thin out, and it basically, you go from a nice little that kind of shaped heart to a globus heart. And that gets real dangerous because, along with the muscle weakening, we can't get blood pumped as efficiently, and it gets real dangerous for these babies because they can go from dilated cardiomyopathy to congested heart failure very quickly. Usually when it goes towards the more serious end of things, that's when we start to notice, or you might notice your kiddo coughing a lot more when they hadn't, being real exercise intolerant, so they're not wanting to be up and about for as long, or if they are, they start hacking and coughing and just panting nonstop. That can be a serious issue, so it's something to be aware of. And those are the more typical signs of cardiomyopathy prone issues and congestive heart failure type things. So keep that in mind, and that's why that's the biggest reason a lot of the veterinary field people do harp on not doing grain-free diets. It's not to try and dissuade you from making personal choices about your kiddo. It's to try and help prevent any issues from coming up that we can help. For that, a lot of the times when they're puppies, of course, there's the fat and protein content being a bit different than when they're in their adult stage. But for those giant breeds, it's a lot more important that the food fed during the adult life stage and into senior is paid attention to as much as when they're puppies, because these guys are huge enough to begin with. We don't need to perpetuate anything that would be harmful to them, such as being overweight. That, it carries over a lot only because they're so big to begin with. We don't want them getting hurt as they get older, just because of the added pressure and strain on their bones. So for those guys, such as those Newfoundlands, the St. Bernards, Irish Wolfhounds, Great Danes, and our baby Mastiffs, quick note, the Rottweiler is the dwarf, if you will, of the Mastiff breeds. It is still technically considered a giant breed, even though it's usually more on the large side, which is healthy. We don't want upwards of 130, 140 Rottweilers. That is a lot of muscle and mass to control, and they're perfectly fine where they're at, between like 95 to 115. I really hope that stays the norm as we keep going, but I've seen some big Rotties in my life. However, when we start getting into the adult stage of giant breeds' life, it's important to maintain their weight because of all the joint issues, but also you'll find that a lot of these guys are couch potatoes. If they're not actively walking with you or their favorite person, they're not engaged with play, or some dogs like the Newfoundlands and the Pyrenees, they love to swim or go for long walks. Most dogs love to go for long walks, but not exempt with pugs and bulldogs. However, they're very, not sedentary, but they're mellow babies. They don't jump and flounce around often. They're not up and with it in 2 seconds all the time. they're slow going, and that's pretty much how they are. So they metabolize much slower. Thus, their food is formulated so that it has much lower fat content than, say, a large or normal adult stage food. It's formulated better for them. Continuing with that thought for the pet's betterment, if you have a giant breed or just a really tall baby like a greyhound, a couple other lanky breeds I'm sure I'm forgetting at the moment, Afghan, you're probably already aware because you've done extensive research. There's a lot of things that go into owning a greyhound or any sight hound, but with the Mastiff breeds, other giant breeds, it does help a lot to have their food and water elevated. So, whether that means putting it on a really sturdy box or crate, or getting a specific manufactured holder for the bowls so that they're a foot or two raised off the ground, because this helps a really common issue that you may have heard of in passing or just unfortunate horror stories that don't end very well. But giant breeds and a lot of the large breeds, any real barrel chested dog, can be very prone to bloat. Now, in the vet field, bloat has two meanings. They could be food bloated, which puppy or younger dog, or any age really, it doesn't matter. Dogs will be dogs, and sometimes they just gorge on a bag of food they found because they managed to get a pantry door open or a cabinet door that wasn't shut fully, and they devoured the whole bag of food. Now they have food bloat because their stomach is engorged with food. That, while sucky, is not a serious emergency issue. The other term we associate that with most often is stomach bloat, sometimes thrown around in the common tongue. But its medical term is gastric dilation volvulus. See, even we screw up the words. Gastric dilation volvulus, which essentially is when the stomach usually sits like this being the esophagus, this being the stomach. When you have these giant breed dogs who are jumping around after a full meal, their stomach can twist on itself, and that up here and down before the lower portion of the stomach, the intestines, that twisting motion can occlude all the blood vessels and important stuff that keeps the organs nice and happy. This is a medical emergency. This cannot wait. This should not wait. This can put a dog of any age from bouncing around nice and happy to down and struggling to just stay alive within moments. And that sounds really silly or shocking, but it has happened. I had a friend who their husband was well aware of these issues. She knew about it. They had a lot of large dogs in the house. It just happened to their Mastiff, who really wasn't even doing a whole lot. Got up to drink quite a bit of water, and 10 minutes later, he was down and not wanting to move. So it's more frequent when a dog is bouncing around after a meal because there is that weight added to the stomach where it can easily twist and flip on itself. But it's just a fact. It doesn't have to be on a full stomach or with much to it at all. It's just one of those things we have to be aware of in the giant breeds that is a contributing factor. One thing that does help in alleviating this fear and possibility down the line is when they get fixed, they can do what's called, again, real common to call it stomach tacking, but in the field we do know it as gastropexy. And that is where a veterinarian, when they're spaying, neutering, or just a general operation, you don't necessarily have to get your animal fixed for this to happen. It's just one of those things that if we go in there, we're gonna get two birds with one stone. So when it's a female, let's say, keep it simple and easy. They'll make an incision into the abdomen anyway, and while they're in there, Often they will go in and for the gastropexy portion, they'll find the stomach and make a few small incisions just on the lining of the stomach, not into the stomach cavity. And they'll make an incision in the abdominal cavity wall, so not quite into the muscle, but just the inner layer of the body cavity of the abdomen. And with that, they'll take suture, and that's where the tacking part comes into play. They'll suture in multiple spots along that incision so that both areas are healing together via the suture and what's called second intention, just the body healing naturally, so that scar tissue and the suture are keeping the stomach adhered to the body wall, and that way it can't twist and flip on itself. So that is the essence of a gastropexy. If you didn't know, now you know. So again, whether you get your animal fixed or not, this can always be done just to help alleviate that concern and possibility for bloat / GDV to ever happen to your animal. Like any animal, everyone is individual, so it's important to take into consideration everything for them and make sure before welcoming one into your home, everything circumstantial wise with you would fit their needs. So do your research. And how would this type of thing tie into, say, fantasy? I think werewolves would be my first go-to. A lot of differences would include, of course, werewolves being able to transition into humans, but that does depend on the type of werewolf as well. Are we talking about ones that just transform with, say, the full moon? Or are we seeing ones that are shifters and can do it willingly? I think whether you're talking about in human or werewolf form, whichever shapeshifter or traditional, I think that would require a heck of a lot more calorie intake because you're having to fuel all the new growth and changing and breaking of bones, as well as the massive amount of fur in a short period of time needing to be grown as well. So you're talking about taking all the reserves needed for normal slow hair growth and thrusting that into anywhere, I'm sure, between a 5 to 15 minute transformation. Who's to say? If you have any other questions or comments about giant breeds and their life stages, please leave me a note in the comments below and I'll get to them as soon as possible. Otherwise, let me know if you guys want anything more divulged into the mythical creature aspect, because I would like to develop that more. I'm just trying to sort through what I really want this channel to be and how to tie that into my more hobbyist portion of life. So let me know, and I hope to see you guys again real soon. Thanks for watching.
Stick menagerie, wild and free. Stories, creatures, mystery. Turn the page, take a peek. Adventures wait.